Many kings and queens have participated in horrible deeds and poor decisions throughout history. Here are some of the evil decisions ever made by royals. Cleopatra of Egypt. Cleopatra is well known for having a tragic ending. The family conflict that propelled her to power as well as her brutal beginning are less well known. Ptolemy XIII, Cleopatra's younger brother, took the kingdom after her father passed away. Because inbreeding was formerly a common practice in old royal families, she was destined to wed him. But because her goals put him in jeopardy, he had her banished. In order to retake the throne with her other younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, Cleopatra joined forces with Julius Caesar. Later on, that younger brother passed away. It's possible Cleopatra poisoned him. In 41 BC, she also ordered the murder of her rival younger sister, Arsinoe IV. According to Schiff, deadly sibling rivalry was widespread under the Ptolemy dynasty. Inbreeding's convoluted family trees led to succession crisis after succession crisis, often with fatal outcomes. According to Schiff, it was uncommon to find a member of the family who did not liquidate a relative or two. Mayhem in Macedonia. Having numerous spouses, each of whom wants to see their own children ascend to the throne, is another guaranteed method to inflame a royal family. Philip II of Macedon, the father of Alexander the Great, likely had 7 wives, one of which was Olympias. Some ancient historians speculate that Olympias may have had anything to do with Philip II's assassination by a bodyguard in 336 BC. The bodyguard was a previous lover of Philip II who had ridiculed the king's new, younger lover into committing suicide, according to a later narrative by the historian Cleitarchus. The bodyguard claims that Philip II's in-law sexually attacked him in reprisal, which prompted the bodyguard to assassinate Philip II in his own pursuit for vengeance. Whatever actually occurred, the dysfunctional Macedonian families persisted after the reign of Philip II. In order to ensure his succession to the throne, Alexander began promptly killing members of opposing families, and Olympias executed Philip II's final wife and her children. The throne was given to Alexander III's mentally challenged half-brother Philip III Oreideos after he passed away in 323 BC, leaving a pregnant wife but no clear heir. Eurydice, the wife of Philip III, tried to make this fictitious king into a legitimate ruler, pitting her against Olympias in the ensuing succession battles. In the end, Eurydice was made to kill herself, and Philip III was put to death by Olympias. Their bodies were interred, then around 17 months later, they were pulled up for a royal funeral and cremation. Olympias would not be spared from the succession battles. Shortly after killing Philip III and Eurydice, she was captured and stoned to death by the family of the victims of her orders. Pharaoh Ramesses III murdered. Ramesses III, a pharaoh of Egypt, ruled from 1186 BC to roughly 1156 BC, when someone slashed his neck so severely that, according to contemporary archaeologists, he would have passed away instantly. According to old papyrus records, Taia, one of Ramesses III's lesser wives, was behind the scheme because she wanted to see her son Pentaweret seated on the throne. According to records from the time, many accomplices, including Pentaweret, received death sentences. In 2012, archaeologists said they might have discovered the prince's mummy. The body in question appears to have been killed by suffocation or strangling because of its anguished look and enlarged lungs. He might have been buried alive or driven to take his own life. Brothers at war. A significant family breakdown can be detected by a battle known as the War of the Two Brothers. Atahualpa and Huascar, 2 of the Inca king Huayna Capac's sons, received the throne after their father's death in 1527. The 2 men had different mothers, because the Inca emperors had numerous wives and concubines. The 2 new kings' joint rule was not very successful. By 1529, war had started. The Last Days of the Incas, written by Kim Macquarie, claims that Atahualpa once fashioned a cup out of one of Huascar's general's skull. The Inca civil conflict would hasten this civilization's demise. In 1532, just as Atahualpa was proclaiming triumph over his brother, Francisco Pizarro's Spanish conquistadors arrived. Atahualpa was taken prisoner by the conquistadors and held for ransom, but he managed to issue his people an imperative command: kill my brother. Huascar would outlast Atahualpa, but not by much. In 1533, the Spanish put him to death. The passive-aggressive emperor. The 13th emperor of China's Ming dynasty, Wanli, had numerous concubines in addition to 2 official consorts. Wanli fervently desired for one of Lady Zheng's 2 sons to succeed him as king. She was his favorite concubine. But this kid, Wanli's third, was not accepted as the emperor's heir by the ministers. They eventually won, and Wanli was compelled to name his first son the crown prince by his consort Lady Wang. The emperor then took a really odd action. He gave up his job. Wamli used to be a capable leader who handled internal uprisings and Japanese invasions with style. However, the last 20 or so years of his rule felt more like a prolonged lame duck phase. According to a 2011 New York Times article, Wamli ignored meetings, memos, and all other royal duties for decades as a form of passive-aggressive protest. Unsurprisingly, this caused the nation to falter. Many historians believe Wamli's rule's self-sabotage was a major factor in the Ming dynasty's demise in 1644. A brother in captive. The first Norman monarch of England, William the Conqueror, had 4 sons. William divided his realm among his 2 surviving eldest sons after the death of the first. After his father died, Robert received Normandy, and William was handed the English crown. Henry, the youngest son, was left behind. Even though he was not given a kingdom, Henry knew how to seize an opportunity. Robert was out on a crusade when William the Younger perished in a hunting accident in 1100. According to the official histories of the British monarchy, Henry beat his absent brother to the punch and was anointed King of England, as Henry I, within 3 days. Henry I defeated Robert's attempt to conquer England, and a few years later, he also conquered Normandy. Henry I kept Robert in prison for the rest of his life after capturing him. Murder mystery. The final Plantagenet ruler of England, Richard III, was recently dug up from a parking lot in Leicester. Richard's supporters hailed the event as a chance to learn more about a monarch who is primarily regarded as a Shakespearean villain. But concerns about Richard's ascent to power persist. King Edward IV left behind 2 young sons when he passed away in 1483. Edward V, the oldest, was just 12 years old, thus Richard III was designated as his protector. Following a 68-day reign, Richard of Shrewsbury, Edward's younger brother, was sent to the Tower of London, where they remained for the rest of their lives. In the meantime, Richard III became king. The boys, now known as the princes in the Tower, are unknown. Nobody knows what happened to them. There is a common belief that Richard III ordered their assassination. Despite the fact that 2 tiny skeletons were discovered in the tower in 1674 and Richard himself passed away in combat 2 years later, taking his secrets with him to his hastily dug grave, no one has ever discovered concrete evidence of the prince's deaths. Henry VII's many wives. The 6 wives of Henry VIII suffered from these outcomes: divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived respectively. Family issues eventually took center stage during this Tudor king's reign because he was unable to produce a son to succeed him. Henry's first spouse was Catherine of Aragon, his brother's widow. The king's argument for divorce focused primarily on whether Catherine had ever had sex with his brother until his gaze wandered to the witty Anne Boleyn in the 1520s. The English Reformation was brought about by the divorce case, which shook the Catholic Church. Despite Henry's divorce, Anne was no better successful at having sons than Catherine was. Some contemporary doctors speculate that Henry may have had a hereditary disease that contributed to his wife's frequent miscarriages. She was hanged after being accused of having sex with her own brother and being charged with treason, adultery, and incest. Henry would eventually be married 4 more times and have Catherine Howard, one of his wives, executed for adultery. Henry's attempts to put a son on the throne ultimately failed because his only male heir passed away while he was an adolescent, only around 6 years into his rule. Then, for just 9 days, Henry's great-niece Lady Jane Grey held the throne until being deposed by Mary I, his daughter by Catherine of Aragon. Elizabeth I took the throne after Mary I, Anne Boleyn's daughter, passed away 5 years into her tenure. Her reign was turbulent, but Henry's worry that a woman could not rule England proved to be completely baseless. The date of the Virgin Queen's assumption to the throne was declared a national holiday, according to the official history of the British monarchy. Remember to like and subscribe to this channel, hit the bell button for easy notifications.